That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Not in blue.
No, he's pretty much.
But very warm. How are you?
Run down here.
No, not this time. I'm actually soon
You
enough.
should talk.
Just a brisk walk.
You're the modern hippie,
Always ends up with the
right?
Yeah.
The natives are.
Coastal chic.
Coastal chic. I'm totally using that.
Oh, good. It's very busy this time of year. Yeah, how's things been with you?
Busy. We
Yeah.
had our accessibility meeting at the school last week.
Nice. How did that go?
Michael, when he started.
Well, it just started. Chrissy Gibson, who's supposed to be serving us refreshments. She thought the meeting was great.
Oh,
So, but it worked out in the end.
well, that's
One of the
good.
best things.
Turn it off now, it's always, it's
Oh,
really
yeah,
does
they
almost
have it
always
off.
work.
We're so lucky.
Yeah. Should tell Stafford
Hot
about
right
it.
up here. Yeah. The.
Was it good?
Thank you for checking in.
Wow. Uh-oh. Never seen that happen before.
Yeah.
That's what it is, Arnie, it's for math, I don't know what it is for.
We're messing with your spelling of your name. I'm sure everybody does that.
Yeah, it's always funny. Most of the time, people end up with like Carl because autocorrect just really
Oh,
hates
yeah.
Carl.
Carl.
Frozen restarted. Like, I don't really know. Told me to restart it. You know, it's good.
That's weird.
It's working, it looks like.
I need to, all my files will work and all these ones.
Oh, no.
Is it just one computer having an issue or are they?
Yeah, Council Lovin, it's been restarting since before Jesus was born.
Yeah.
That's a really long time. We need to scare it. When's the last time you plugged it in and it didn't update?
It just asked me to restart it, so I pressed OK to restart it.
I can do that.
5 years.
I noticed he had answered that question.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
He's not sure. He's not sure.
Well, yeah, I'll see.
Like this morning, they visited.
He's saying the
Great
agenda's right
team
here.
and a
No.
great team.
So did you get
That's a great, yeah. In COVID, and we were all talking about, oh, look, let's help your back way, and someone basically said, choke it on the wall, and I'm like, okay, so just picture yourselves, and they're like, what? I look at this. Yeah.
Did your eyeballs work?
That should just be, yeah.
I'm very hard on.
I know, you can work here.
Because even with the sign,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You are.
Literally working ideas. Amazing.
so I can see, like, you know, I can.
Thank
you.
Working now?
Am I good for,
Yeah.
Are we good, Tracy? We're good to go. Good to go? Totally. I just saw your text now.
oh, I'm not late for this meeting. Yeah.
No. Thank goodness, I was like, oh, wait a minute.
I will call this meeting to order, the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Town of Gibsons, May 16th, 2023. And calling it to order at 3 p.m. And we're honored to gather on the traditional territories of the Skokomish Nation. I'll seek some input on this, but we seem to have most staff from the Planning and Development Department here. So does it make sense to go, does it work to go first for Planning and Development? Okay. So with that adjustment, we've moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor? The agenda is approved, and our first quarterly report will be the Planning and Development Department.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here basically to give regrets for Leslie Ann, who had to run off for an emergency a few minutes ago. So I don't have a presentation to share, but you've got the report, and I'm here. We've got Tamara from the bylaw office and Jason to answer any questions they might have from the report.
Okay, any questions? Sorry, we all have to scroll down now because it was on our last on our agenda. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor DeAndretti.
Well, the report actually is very detailed, so I was more curious, what's happening with Gospel Rock? Hopefully, you know.
Our CAO probably answer that.
Through you, Ms. Mayor. So Gospel Rock, we've been in touch regularly, and they have announced that they've reached an agreement with their construction company, a local Macon, to start the on-site development of Block 7, so within the village itself. Pardon me. We're working with them to do a review of the detailed design of the works. And we're expecting a security deposit for that work as well. So it's progressing. I think that day has come. We're satisfied with the contractor that they have, and so we'll have everything in place, I think, over the next few days for that to go ahead.
Is it confirmed that they're coming with any modifications to the plan? I heard rumblings of that, but I don't know if it's confirmed or not. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've had discussions with them around the hotel portion itself. As I recall, there's a hotel of around 50 rooms or so. They've indicated an interest in expanding that number of rooms, and that would imply coming back to council for a bit of a rezoning and a forming character within their space. I think up to 80 rooms or something like that. They haven't confirmed that yet.
Okay. It's not confirmed yet, but they're talking about it. Yeah. The other, Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White. Thank you for the report. As usual, it covers a lot of stuff. With one of the things that I've noticed, and it sort of, I guess, bridges planning and possibly infrastructure, Venture Way, there's been the work going on there recently with the water line and the repaving. And it may have just slipped through the crack, but one of the businesses that I happened to visit last week found themselves without water, and they had no notification, which I said that's very unlike town staff not to notify, so I'm assuming it was just something happened at the last minute and they didn't get notified. But what I have noticed on Venture Way is people assume that there's street parking. And particularly in the area of 1000, it's getting a little problematic. It's quite often down to single lane traffic because there's parking on both sides. So I'm assuming in the fullness of time that will be addressed with no parking signs and yellow curbs and things like that. And the other place that it occurs is in the bike lane on Gibsons Way at Weingarten. There's some businesses on the commercial lower level, and people park both directions, cars facing up the street, Gibson's Way on the wrong side of the road, parked, but they're parking in a bike lane, which I don't think was our intent. Because now what happens is people open their car doors and cyclists swerve out to miss the car door, and now they're in oncoming traffic. So just a couple of areas that I just wanted to, I'm assuming it may be in the works because the bike lane isn't that old and Venture Way is relatively new, but just wanted to flag them. Thank you.
I see the bylaw enforcement officer taking notes in the back. I think CAO Machado wanted to address this.
Mr. Mayor, on Venture Way, I think we have sort of the area has been a lot busier. So we've got construction staff, we added our own projects to it, and I suspect we'll be further busy. Ultimately, I think after we out of the street ourselves, I think issues like parking, the biking and so on will become a bit more evident, but I think we have probably a couple more months of discontent. On the Gibsons Way Weingarten, what's been missing there is the yellowing of the curb, which provides an additional tool for bylaw to enforce the no parking. Right now, without that, we can't do much. It's somewhat, so that's one of those conflicts that we have there, but we can resolve that.
Just follow up because the bike lane has been in since last year. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've seen cyclists have to swerve out into traffic because people park there. And I would really hate to see another cycling fatality in the community. It's something that sort of impacts everyone very dramatically. So, and I believe we're coming into bike to work period where more people are probably going to be on the road. So.
No.
Okay, so Councilor Thompson first. Councilor Thompson.
Different issue.
Yeah, different issues.
Thank you, Mayor. Great report, and it goes, it's worth mentioning your 330 email inquiries, 450 phone inquiries, the mass amount of volume that you've all been managing this last quarter. Well done. DP 1 and 2, do we have an idea when that report, it looks like it's in progress. Do we have an idea? Is there an indication when we might see that?
Sure, that's what Councilor DeAndre. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I don't, if I had our reports list in front of me, I might be able to answer that, but I don't know the answer at this moment. We can follow up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Actually, on the topic of bylaw, I had several occasions in the last while about dogs going after people, to the point that I had even someone knocking at my door crying because this person is walking with the little dog and the bigger dog comes unleashed, and obviously even the death of the peacock was also an unleashed dog, as far as I understand. I might be wrong, but so I have been concerned that we do have a bylaw in town, but it's not really reinforced. My husband runs all over the town and is always like, he sees a dog, and there has been occasions people, beaten by dogs. And I just wondering if we could have a program that we enforce that so people get the message, because I don't think it's right that you are afraid of going. I have people that say, I don't go on trails with my small dog, especially with the thing with small dogs and large dogs. And I think people need to respect. If it's a leashed area, that's a leashed area. So.
Don't know if be okay to let Tamara maybe comment on what she's
Yeah,
been seeing
definitely.
out there?
Yeah. It'd be great to hear
Yeah, we
what's
do.
going, and I mean, I do want to address too that it's in the report that there has been quite a lot of enforcement. And I know at least in one of those instances you mentioned there was enforcement for sure. But I'll go to
Thank you.
Tamara.
Yeah, we do. We have seen a definite increase in dog-related calls, I'd say in the first quarter. We do patrols, and we do often speak to people about dogs being off leash. Dogs being off leash is a big thing in the town. It's a big, we get a lot of calls about it, and it's a big compliance issue. So we are out there educating, but we do have a lot of people who walk their dogs off leash, for sure.
So just a clarification, so we are educating, but we are not fining at this point?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. We're doing both.
Oh, both.
So for a bylaw, we always, first, our standpoint is education, but definitely for sure there are tickets being issued for non-compliance.
Since we're on this topic, let's talk about Brothers Park, because I understand there's going to be there's some media coverage on the fact that we're stepping up enforcement in Brothers Park because there was an informal group that would come there to use it as a dog park, even though it isn't. So now there's I think there was even talk of a protest. There's some people are upset. At least one person's contacted me about it. So I just want to let council know that's going on, and maybe staff can provide some more details on how that's going.
Yeah, I think the signs have gone up, and on Friday I paid a visit up to the park around 3 p.m. That's usually the time I think that this group meets. And I just wanted to introduce myself because I hadn't really met them formally since stepping into this role. And the signs had gone up, so I just explained that enforcement would be commencing. As per our bylaws, we do not allow dogs on sports fields or in parks. So I think it was known that it was coming. So going forward, we will be enforcing that and issuing tickets as we go.
Considering it's a community issue, it's something I've suggested informally so far, but we haven't set up a meeting yet. But that we have a kind of inter-staff meeting about this, and I can bring council's concerns and ideas to that, and any community ideas to talk about this situation where people were using that opportunity. I mean, I even wonder. I just took some time today to visit the SCRD dog park at Shirley Macy. It was totally empty, beautiful day. And I know some community members have said they don't like that for whatever reason, that park, but it's kind of an ongoing conversation. And I think one piece too is that small dog, big dog dynamic that's happening is some people don't want to take their small dogs to the Shirley Macy Park where there are sometimes larger dogs. But yeah, I wonder if there could be certain times to make better use of the park because it was completely empty today. Beautiful day. So it's an ongoing conversation. Councillor Cole, did you want to talk about that too?
Thank you for the acknowledgement. There's quite a few issues. When we had the public meeting on what people wanted to see in our strategic plan, there was a group at that meeting who expressed that they were organizing to formally request that the dog park come forward again. A couple of the local businesses have been supporting. If you want to join the dog park support group, fill in the blank sign here. The Shirley Macy Park is a great space, improperly fenced. A split rail fence doesn't really contain dogs if they're bound and determined. And two sides of it are wide open to the woods. So it's it's a beautiful space, but you know, it isn't a secure dog park by any stretch of the imagination. And I can fully appreciate people with smaller dogs or dogs that, you know, see wildlife and decide they're gonna run. They're gone. So it's, the idea is great, but the execution of it wasn't totally ideal.
Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, I would like to discuss this somehow, like if council makes because it's not just, I mean, I was bitten on the path. I know Sue followed up with that lady, just bringing supplies into my restaurant. A dog bit me in the leg. So for me, I'm on the other side. I'm like, some people don't like dogs. Some people are uncomfortable walking around with dogs or just running, and that the sea path is one of those places. So many people just let their dogs do whatever they want. You know, it's funny when Grant excavated that piece of property from Lanita's down to the parking lot, the lower lot there, like there was like 1,000 bags of dog poo. Like people were picking it up, putting it in the bags and just throwing it into that property when it was empty. So I think, I don't want to be railroaded by dog owners to create a dog park when, you know, I think it has to work both ways. I think people that have dogs have to be respectful of people that don't. And I find, and I apologize if anyone has a dog, but I mean, even just dealing with people trying to get in the restaurant with a dog, they're disrespectful to me, and they just can't believe that it's just like these dogs are running people's lives now, and they're making dining choices for them, because if people can't have a dog on the patio with them, then they won't eat there. And I was like, fine, it suits me, fine, I don't care. But it's getting a little out of control, and I know the SVPA is, they're like overwhelmed with people returning dogs after COVID, so it's an issue for sure. So I just like to see the other side get represented as well, not just the dog people, but maybe, I don't want to say anti-dog people, but just people, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, on that strategic plan feedback, I took note of one person who definitely spoke in the front row at that meeting, saying that she was organizing a group and was on behalf of a group, but then we received very little in our survey. The survey, I don't know if, I don't remember, but it had maybe one mention, if any. And then there was a petition that went out online, but most of the people who signed up to it weren't even from Canada. So that's kind of hard to take very seriously. But I think it's going to be an ongoing discussion, especially if maybe, I mean, it's quite possible that there was this group, the group of people who wanted a dog park have been using this time at Brothers informally and technically against the bylaw. And so maybe they'll be, now that that's getting enforced, maybe we'll be hearing more from them now. I'm sure we will. Councillor DeAndrade.
Perhaps a suggestion that our newsletter, we can have a dog's etiquette or something like that we have a column that we give hints to owners and we explain the problem. Because of course, I don't think people do because they have bad intention. It's just like, and there's always the argument, oh, my dog doesn't do that until it does. And oh, we never did that before. Oh, you really?
Councillor Kroll.
I'd like to move that we move on. This meeting is going to the dogs.
Do we have more questions on the report for planning and development? Go ahead, yeah.
Actually, when I read about the step 1, step 2, that was implemented, I can see it's a little bit challenging, and I see I think the building department is starting to engage with owners, but I was just curious because when we discussed implementation of the step code was a lot of concerns with costs. So if there's any feedback at this point and or where we at and how this will, I don't know if there may impact construction or maybe impact the department. I was just curious if there's any insight.
Yeah, that was my question too. So especially I know step code was first talked about several years ago now, and construction costs have, of course, shot up massively since then. So, yeah, I'm interested in the implications on building costs. If
So, yeah, we, prior to May 1st, we're in step 1. But going to step 3 could have some additional costs, although most builders, even in step 1, were already building to step 3. They just didn't know or they did know. So it's not a huge leap, which is why we suggested to go to step 1, originally opting in. Now step 3 is mandatory. So it's out of our control anyway if we're choosing to enforce the code. There may be some additional costs. If we were to opt into the GHG emission, that's the other option in there, that could have some additional costs, but that's not mandatory at this time. So I think in step 3, won't be too much different from what we currently are. But eventually, when they enforce higher steps, that will inevitably have some higher construction costs, again, that can't really be avoided. It will force builders to think about how they build and try to build smarter and avoid backtracking from making mistakes. I think the bigger piece will be the non-compliance issue. Now, if somebody doesn't meet step 3, that becomes a non-compliance issue. If someone didn't meet step 1 previously, it was just a wash. There was no enforcement on that. But if somebody doesn't meet the step 3, that'll be a decision for council and how we deal with that, but it will likely lead to non-compliance, and similar to a notice on title for any other non-compliance. If it doesn't meet the code, it's non-compliant. So people have to meet that step 3 now, and if they don't pass the blower door test, there could be some issues, which that could lead to higher costs perhaps if they have to undo something. Because the problem is, by the time you check for that, it's likely once they've already drywalled, and to fix those problems could be costly. So again, it will force builders to pay more attention to details and ensure that they're meeting those targets and build better. That's the whole idea, is to build more efficient buildings. So yeah, it could be, we all see it as a heavy, expensive task, and it is, but the idea is that it's for the greater good. It's just hard to see that in the beginning when it's cost you money, right? But yeah, time will tell, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any, I always think, I think what we want to avoid is the case scenario that you mentioned, that at one point the builder built something, especially I would anticipate maybe smaller, probably not big buildings, and then it has to come to council. So is there any procedure, any mandatory thing that the builder becomes aware and maybe check box, he has to do this, something that makes him aware that there will be consequences if it doesn't comply?
I mean, do you mean like letting them know that there will be non-compliance issues if they don't comply?
During the process, right, when there's the application?
Yeah, I mean, all throughout the application and plan check and issuance, and even during the inspections, we're always reminding them of the requirements, keeping them up to date, and letting them know, hey, we need this, or you need to meet this. And so we send out notifications to the builders and the developers, and so they're all aware of the code changes, at least the bigger developers that we're familiar with. And homeowners who are doing it on their own are the ones that we take extra time and spend more time with them to make sure they're aware of the process. But the bigger developers, they're usually already aware, so shouldn't be an issue with them. It's more the homeowner builders that we want to make sure. So yeah, for sure, but we definitely provide that information as we go. Sometimes people either forget or don't quite understand, but that's with anything, we get that with anything, so there's gonna be some, I'm sure. But we haven't experienced that yet because previously it wasn't a requirement to comply.
Thank you, Mayor White. And thank you for what you're doing. Through various hats that I wear in the community, I do get feedback on our building department. And what I've been hearing lately is that we are very fortunate to have an absolutely great team to work with. Contractors are saying, the team you've got there now are just a delight to work with, and they're hopeful and they're resourceful and, sort of going the extra mile to make sure that things are being done properly in a non-confrontational manner. So I just wanted to, and it's not just one person, it's, 4 or 5 major contractors who are really quite thrilled with the team we have right now. They said, if you're gonna build in Gibsons, it's the place to build.
Thank you for saying that.
And we're getting great feedback about our bylaw enforcement too, for sure. Similar, I think we all get that on a regular basis. So thanks for being here and supporting this report. And I think we're ready to go to our next report, which is the first one on the agenda, which is Administration and Corporate and Legislative Services Departments. Thanks.
So this is the report of the CAO and myself, our Manager of Corporate and Legislative Services, Tracy Hinks, and Bronwyn, who's here as well. So we started out by giving you a kind of a high level of what's been going on, and of course it includes a little snippet on our IT and AV for this room. And I want to give Tracy credit because we continue to work on improving the system, and we have a young person in mind that may be able to be providing us with some troubleshooting during meetings who's quite AV savvy. So we'll keep you posted, but we're hoping that will happen. I think the report pretty much lays it all out, so I'll just open the floor to questions.
Okay, Councillor DeAndrade.
Actually, it's not a question, but I just want to acknowledge, I really appreciate the description of the webinar, the Towards Collaborative Governance and Shared Innovation, and with the issues with policy, with the reconciliation. Especially, we were at the meeting yesterday, and it was very interesting because you went into details of what the province, so I think it was a reaffirmation and more information that we learned. So it's good because now it's written here. So I think it gives us, because it is I won't say convoluted, but it can become, because we don't understand where power is the obligation. Things are downloaded to council, to municipalities, but then where the power lies. So really appreciate the explanation here. So it's good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? It's kind of the work we're probably most familiar with, a lot of it here. And it's very, very thorough report. So, thank you.
Yeah.
And now we're on to infrastructure services, 3.3. Back to our CAO first. Finance. Oh, yeah, okay. Finance and Human Resources, 3.2.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll be brief. You're probably quite familiar with the work we've done over the last quarter as well. Quarter one, we were juggling budget. So I spent a lot of time with council and also year-end work at the same time. So budget ended up, the final budget presentation just at the end of quarter one, which was great. And we were working on year-end with our auditors also at the end of quarter one. The one section that has quite a bit of information for council is the grants section. As you can see, they're continuing to be really active with grant projects. The town has a lot of grant projects on the go. You can see on page 3 of the report, we've got a lot of extensions that have been granted. So as we've been receiving or experiencing delays, we've reached out to the grant providers and they've been providing extensions. And it's been a really common request when we approach them. They say, oh yes, this is really common. So it's not just here, it's basically everywhere. So we're really pleased that they've given us a bit more time to use those. This report includes the addition of the new Local Watershed Climate Adaptation to Natural Assets Grant, which was a very significant grant for the town. Page 4 lists the pending grant applications, and there's 2 there. We're still waiting for decisions on those. In the next quarter, we'll have a recent one that we added, which is the ICE-T Community Placemaking Grant. It's a new grant we applied for, and that's to help support the project at Five Corners. The selected balances now reflect the final balances as of 2022. That's based on the audit, so they can see the reserves, the DCCs, and the debt. And those are now final now that the audit's complete. And I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Sir Lumley.
It's partially a question. I wasn't sure where we left it off during budget, because I know we discussed it. It was the permissive tax exemptions, and it did come up at the LMLGA that we attended, like in there, when they were voting on motions that they were gonna send to UBCM, or is it UMBC?
UBCM.
Yeah, UBCM, sorry, I get that wrong all the time, I don't know why. And it was a really close vote, but that's what the motion was, is to allow communities to have more control over a permissive, for places of worship, I think it was specifically. But anyway, it was a heated debate, kind of like there's a lot of people at the pro and con mic, and I think it got defeated, like barely, standing count. But I know we talked about it, I just wasn't sure where we're at with that right now, as far as I think we were gonna look into that a little bit further.
Okay. I'll look to our staff.
I can make a comment about permissive in general as well as places of worship. So permissive tax exemption, we're actually just finishing up the packages to send out this week to the organizations who've received permissives previously. And so we'll be bringing a report to council at the July meeting with all the new applicants and this will be for 2024 permissives. Specifically for places of worship, so they're a bit of a combo. They have a statutory exemption for the footprint of the place of worship and basically the footprint of the building and the land below. Everything else around that is permissively exempt, and that's where council, under the current legislation, has the flexibility to exempt that or not. So I would be curious to see what the motion was for a change for that, but that's how it stands right now.
That answers your question? Yeah. Other questions on this report? Now, related to grants, but also I think I may have seen something about it in the last report too, and also it connects to parks and infrastructure. I'm curious what the timing is for completing the first, the art path. I mean, I'm actually our liaison to that committee, but I know there was one final installment, I think, that needed to be put in. Probably our parks foreman knows best what that is, but maybe someone else does, I don't know.
There's one, there were 5 pieces that you might recall for the path, and the one of the larger ones still hasn't been installed, and that's the aluminum looking one that has sort of a viewing platform through it. As of about a month ago, we had identified a spot just by Inglis Park, just where the bus stop is. There's a large concrete structure there, and the artist met with staff there and seemed okay with it. And then it was just a matter of then assembling it on site, which we facilitated. So, from a perspective of the art path projects, there's the one left. There's a site ID, and it's just coordinating the installation now that's left. And there might be a couple of signs to be installed at the entrance to Inglis and Mahon, just to let people know that there's some art path down there. That should complete the project from our perspective. And there's the remaining portion under that grant, which is the part that got extended. That relates to the art galleries contribution portion, which is to work with the Squamish Nation on a year of art at the art gallery. So that should be it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Thompson.
Being a new counselor, can you walk me through the process when we're looking at the Strategic Priorities Fund, Lower Watershed Climate Adaptation, with just under 6 million with the deadline of November? Obviously, this being such a large allocation of funds, and when we're seeing the smaller grants, it's very specific as to the allocation. Can you just talk to me about how we get more specific on that use and what the timeframes are and just how that process works? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, feel free to jump in, Lorraine, if anything stands out. This grant is a little bit unusual in that, well, for its amount and the fact that it's 100% funding. And it's not that we already have this money, we have to spend the money and then we invoice for our costs. And one way to think about this project is it's a collection of projects. And each project kind of, we're thinking about the beachcomber culvert replacement. So we've got our failing retaining wall and call out about a dozen different sites within this area. And, typically a regular site like the pond is a lot more straightforward because it's just one site and everything happens in that space. This one, there's a variety of sites. But how we're going about it is sort of by doing all the archaeology, doing all the engineering design, and then doing the tendering. So over a period of 2 to 3 years, I would imagine. That's sort of how we're hoping to break it down. And then on a yearly basis, we'll report back to council sort of what's been done, what we're projecting for next year. So I'd imagine that at the next quarter, we would have some reporting on how this is breaking down because we would have done some work in between. Good news is for the larger portions, we've already done some of that work like archaeology and design. So we should be able to hit the ground with some projects even this year. If not, I think because it's water and there's a window there, it's quite small, which is July 15 to October 15 or so. So that's the type of space that we have for doing this work. If that helps somewhat. But, it's a project management on steroids in some ways.
Okay, thank you. And our final 2023 quarter one report is infrastructure services 3.3.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, okay. So I'm here representing Trevor, the Director of Infrastructure Services, just to present this report. And so I'll go quickly through this. From a staffing update point of view, I guess we had quite a few things happening. We finally hired the project coordinator. We've been looking for that person for 3 years, I think, as well as an administrative assistant. The project coordinator will be starting next week, so that will help us manage all those projects. Also, our chief operator at the wastewater treatment plant left us, so we're actively looking for somebody else. Thankfully, we were able to hire a contractor to help us there. I was hired as a manager of maintenance and operation, but temporarily, so that's why you see me here. Also, as part of this year's budget, we will be hiring another operator for the wastewater treatment plant, wastewater technician, and a new position for building maintenance. So that will be posted shortly. Also, we will be working I'm switching out of staffing and talking about the tree bylaw, and that will be reviewed as part of the urban forest plan. We've hired a consulting firm to do that, and they will be looking at all aspects of the tree preservation bylaw. And there will be community engagement when that happens. We started spending on our capital projects at the sanitary plant, the centrifuge replacement. We're looking at flows and capacities and stuff for the future. As you saw, Venture Way and Cascade Crescent, there's a lot of work happening there with our water main replacement. Well, number 6, we're on the last stage of commissioning there. So this week we're doing bacteriological testing of the water. So we think by the end of the week we should be able to run it manually, and in the next couple of weeks being able to put it online. So that will be a major milestone for us. Yeah, we already talked about the White Tower Pond project. With the White Tower Pond expansion, we received all the bids. They've been evaluated, and recommendation will be coming to council probably next week. With the 494 South Fletcher upgrades, bids have been received and they're being evaluated. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything else.
A couple of things.
Okay. Sorry. With the regard to the operations, utility operations at the wastewater treatment plant, I just wanted to you to look at the table showing the various flows coming down to the plant. So you have the influent flow, the total flow, and some of it coming from Prowse Road, and some of it coming from by gravity to the plant. And if you look at the numbers, you'll see that about 60% of the flow, total sanitary flow, goes down to Prowse Road. So it's very, that station is critical for us, as always been. Last year we had issues with the backup generator, which were fixed eventually. So it's very reliable now. And then on the water distribution side of things, as you can see, we are showing each well production, and one of the things that we're doing now is an audit as to this is what the wells are producing, and now we're measuring we're metering all the water used at each location in the town. So the idea is to make sure that, what's the difference between what we're producing and what we're metering, because the difference is leaks and, whenever there's a fire practice, I guess, people use water. But those two numbers should correlate somewhat, within 20%. So, and the rest is pretty standard. Last thing is on homelessness. Our parks people have had to deal quite regularly with homelessness issues, dealing directly with homeless people, and it has been going well in general, but it requires tact, I guess, from our people. And also there's a safety aspect to this, so we're reminding our staff, to be mindful, respectful, and yet think of their safety all the time. So this is going well. That's about it.
I'll just follow up on that last piece, and just in my role of signing checks, I don't know if it's in here. But I was very pleased to see that some of our park staff have done some Pro D in mental health first aid, which is a really great,
Yeah, we had
great
a couple
training.
people go, and we'll be sending additional people as spots come available for us.
CAO Machado.
Just a couple more things, if I may, further to what Daniel presented. First of all, just acknowledging Daniel and his calm and collected self. It was wonderful to have him over the last few months, and particularly for Trevor's, early days with us. It seems like it was a long time ago, but just a few weeks ago we were clearing snow, and we got through that season. I think relatively speaking, it was operation as usual, but there was no big surprises, and we trained a few more folks, and our operators are relatively young compared to what they used to be, even 10 years ago, and they're diverse, and so that's been really good to see. We have a lot more capacity to respond to that. The treatment plant last week was a bit of a challenge. It's our most expensive toy, but it's also speaking of our ability to. One of our bigger concerns is what people dump into the system, and you might have heard or noticed yourself some a bit more odor than normal, and that had to do with the fact that there was a site in town that inadvertently was sort of disposing of materials that they should not, and so we had to track that down. We were able to tell that this was arriving, was causing disruption to the processing, so we went out and found the space and spoke to the fellas, and they responded positively. But it just shows you how you least expect it, something as simple as dumping a bucket of material. It's a little bit more than that, but nevertheless, that's always a concern, and it's gonna take us a bit of time to get back to what that operation was at. The water agreement portion, it's something, as you know, it's public knowledge that we're discussing with the regional district, the likelihood of needing more water this summer, and it's a work in progress, and we're trying to make sure our house is in order and that our pumps are working properly, which they are, and we'll have an additional capacity to service the region. So I think you'll hear soon from us with a date from Brian and one of us for the opening of Well 6, which is something we should celebrate. And that obviously is sort of has implications for town's commitments to supporting the region on that. So yeah, that's mostly what I wanted to just convey in addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, just maybe in the vein of this report, I just wondered if there was is there any update on, I know it's not directly related to this, but the recycling depot. I know that do they have a 2-year contract that they've negotiated for another 2 years for that property? Is that, I just wondered if there was anything.
I know a little bit about, I think they need they've got a contract with the SCRD, and I think they're coming up, I think it doesn't expire right away, but I think it's in about a year, and they're wanting to, but we're communicating. I think we've got a meeting booked this week even. The owners wants to engage the town in the conversation, so CAO Machado and I are meeting him this week. I don't know if you have anything to add about that.
Just that, the SCRD is aware of the situation. It's the timing of negotiating those types of sites, it always seems very tight. And I think that everybody wants assurances of some certainty of tenure, both the landowner, the operator, and the regional district. It's a busy yard for the community. It collects it would be a loss to lose that yard, needless to say, in all kinds of ways. So we have a vested interest in ensuring that continues. I think we'll see the meeting with the property owners and the operators, just to get a better sense from them what type of help they might need from the town, rather than us just speaking independently with the SCRD. Need a bit of support on our end, let's say.
My question, it's because, I mean, I hope everyone's aware of this, but it's like the reason I asked that question was because you said things were going into the waste treatment plant. And like the recycling depot isn't just where people drop off cardboard and plastic. Like, I took a broken fridge up there from Smitty's, and then they call in the refrigeration people to take the Freon out, and it's like $50. It's really nothing, but I don't know where I'd take. I mean, if you don't want to find garbage in the woods, I mean, you might want to, get behind keeping this recycling depot. That's all. So, anyway.
Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White. And to Councillor Lumley's point, I think the recycling depot it's actually a social hub of the community. Like, you go to the recycling depot and you run into Mrs. Brown you haven't seen in months. It's particularly on weekends. So it's reminds me of a small town in Connecticut where we lived, where Tyler's store was the gathering point. So anything we can do to keep, because the curbside recycling has proven itself. 90% of the stuff ends up being cross-contaminated and ends up in the landfill. So anything we can do to, reuse, repurpose, etc. What I did really want to address at this point was our park staff, our bylaw, who have left the room. People are very quick to criticize staff, but they haven't a clue at times some of the things that they have to deal with. Good Friday, parks, bylaw, we're out dealing with a dead deer near one of the parks. We anticipated that it was potentially families out walking, Good Friday, kids seeing Bambi lying dead at the side of the road was not going to be a pleasant thing. And our staff are all over it. By 7:30 in the morning, it was gone. In the same area, a couple weeks later, they have another situation to deal with that, isn't an easy situation to have to deal with when we lose a member of the community and our staff have to deal with the aftermath. So I think, it's a huge shout out. Should, go to our respective departments that deal with situations that go as far as the public, who are so quick to jump on people for things not going right, to acknowledge the things that staff have to deal with from times that are not at all pleasant.
Thank you, Councillor Kroll. Councillor D'Andretti.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things. One is a question regarding hazardous trees in public land. Are they like on the street or inside parks? And what does it mean? Do we need to remove them fully?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's just in the absence also knowing something specifically about we're talking about. So we, pretty arc, so almost on a schedule, we go to different sites and just assess the any type of risk, whether it's after a storm or somebody let us know, or part of our own inspections. So that the risk management is just kind of goes with the territory, I guess, but this is within publicly owned spaces. Typically be at or near a park.
Just a clarification, when you say hazardous trees, so there was a full removal of hazardous trees here, of 40 in town?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We remove hazardous trees. I think that here on Sharman Lands, for example, around White Tower. It's just, but again, it's just part of ongoing work. some over at Arrowhead Park. For a while there, we had to tackle the ones that are right behind the houses there, sort of leaning the wrong way. Yeah, so that's sort of.
Yeah, okay. May I ask another question? What about our water consumption update in the website? It has been 2019. When is it happening? Is it gonna happen this year?
It's gonna happen this year.
Okay, great.
Relatively imminent, because the conversation has happened, maybe.
And Michelle just informed me today that she has the data, so I'll be updating it hopefully next week.
So my last question is, I see Chester Creek, the installation of the last, how to say, the climate station. So what's the plan for the whole restoration? I know we got the grant, so is it something's gonna happen this year? I know a lot of the work is done during summer and fall. What is the plan for this year? If
I think this year, the retaining wall is probably the one that we're most concerned about. We'd like to get at it the fastest. And again, because we've done the engineering and the archaeological work and the permitting, so those areas will be the first ones to move. That one in each corner.
Okay, thank you. One item I wanted to raise, and I've already raised it with our CIO, I actually had to reach him on the weekend about it, is vandalism in our community. And mischief and vandalism seems to be kind of popular this spring. I witnessed some of it on the weekend, and saw that one of our Dougal Park unfortunately had a incident where two of our pieces of property there were seriously damaged. And I'm just wondering what are we doing to monitor the situation, and maybe I don't know if it's in our reporting here, like kind of keeping track of vandalism that's going on in the town, and kind of recognizing trends and keeping track of how much staff time and funds are getting used up by this, and whether it's something. I know in the past sometimes I remember it being a topic at the former youth action committees and things. Yeah. I wonder if it needs to be pursued in that way again with other agencies, including the RCMP obviously, and community services, and yeah.
One thing we were wondering is if it would be worthwhile for the RCMP, for instance, and one of our parks person to go in the high school, and just talk about vandalism and what that means, the cost, and because it's a total waste, and it's discouraging for people also. Like today again, I think in Wine Garden toilet, it's just somebody goes in and damages it, and but also painting everywhere on everything. So we're assuming that it is a high school thing, but maybe not. I don't know. So, and the idea of the RCMP is not to instill fear, but to at least get people aware that there's a cost associated with this, and someday they'll be the adults and they'll be the ones paying, and yeah. But sorry, as far as keeping track, we could go back and find and total what we've spent so far, let's say in the last quarter, and it gives us an idea a little bit of what that means in terms of material and also in terms of staff time. Yeah.
Would be useful, especially if we're considering kind of communicating out more to the community. Did you want to speak to the CIO?
Yeah, just to more address your question, remember Mr. Hurd, John Hurd, was a fellow that lived on School Road in Abs. And in those days, we primarily had a tagging problem, and he was out regularly cleaning it up. we also photographed,
Completely volunteer.
completely volunteered, absolutely.
He also
And-
did the speed watch.
Yeah, it's great. He was a very good guy. But the RCMP also had a program, and with those tags, they were able to sometimes trace it back to a folk or two. We're not particularly convinced this is a young people or an older person. This is people out there. The challenge is the type of destruction. We moved from tagging to just seriously damaging public infrastructure, which is, it's one thing to burn the garbage can, is another thing to rip fixtures off walls and water damage and burn the electrical and stuff. So our costs are likely going to show an increase. And it started, I was mentioned to the mayor yesterday, it started more seriously about probably 6 weeks ago, and you could see they've gone through all the bathrooms now. They're on the Dougal Park on the weekend, and bathroom is one thing. When it gets into the water system, in this case, there was a rock thrown through the pump house, which houses equipment and chlorine and control systems, and that part got concerned when the mayor called. And so we happened to have staff out, and so we covered that up right away. But yeah, it's disturbing, and I think we have to probably do some additional messaging to try and get folks to keep an eye on things, but also, I think this is going to require people just owning up to it in some form, and that's where we are, unfortunately.
Yeah, and local businesses are getting vandalized too. Yeah. Yeah.
Good place too. Yeah.
I just got a quote today, $600.
Kale?
Yeah, it definitely is a broader trend. We've been noticing it a lot at school, especially with bathrooms, that stuff like that will happen with vandalism. And it's hard, even in the school environment, it's something that's costly, but it's also very difficult to address. Especially at a school, it's even an easier environment because we have cameras set up in the hallway. You can monitor that stuff. But I think some of the approaches that have worked, at least in a school environment, is making it something that the community is aware that's happening, because then you get that public knowledge that this is an issue, and that it creates maybe those people think about it more, but then it's just, you also don't want to bring as much awareness to it. So it's a difficult topic, but yeah, it's definitely a broader community issue, and it has been getting to more destructive vandalism too. Even in the school, people have ripped off stall doors and stuff like that, where it gets to that level. So it's definitely a broader issue.
That's very cool.
Thank you, Mayor White. To Kale's point, I think awareness is important. Mr. Tardif mentioned costs. I think it would be really good if we actually had, I don't want hours spent on it, but a report of what we spent this year to vandalism, and through our communications officer will put it out this is what's happened in our town. People talk about this lovely little seaside community. Wake up. This is what it's costing you, the taxpayer, to fix this stuff. And I think if people are aware of a cost, they tend to suddenly have eyes on the street. Not being sort of draconian about it, and behind every bush there's someone lurking with a camera to stop it. But I think the awareness that Kale suggested, and put a tag on it, and to get that out there, and people are going to be, during the beginning of COVID, we did the business watch, and we caught, I think we had 23 files over the period we did it, that, so but I think cost and what it's going to cost the community might make a few people wake up, and rather than turning a blind eye to it, reporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any more questions for this report? Okay. Seeing none, the next regular Committee of the Whole meeting will be held June 20th, 2023 at 3 p.m. And we need a motion to adjourn. So move.